Hey, everyone. My name is Robyn Mack, and I'm an associate editor at Reuters Breakingviews. We are the commentary and opinions arm of Reuters. So welcome to this panel, Navigating AI as a Venture Fund. It's 4 o'clock, I understand, so well done, and it's almost happy hour. So we're all gathered here today on a Thursday afternoon in Singapore because we are all very excited about artificial intelligence. And as a human being, how can you not be excited about all the different possibilities and potential? But as a financial journalist, from the outside, what I see is a lot of companies and investors just pouring huge sums of money into the space with very little to show for financially so far. So I think it was Sequoia that estimated generative Gen AI made about $3 billion in revenue last year, which is very impressive for a one-year-old industry. But that's a fraction of the $50 billion spent on NVIDIA chips. So we've got untested business models, uncertain technology, eye-watering valuations, lots of hype, lots of buzz, lots of FOMO. In sum, these are the classic signs of a financial bubble. So I'd like to kick off the discussion with, are we in a bubble? So let's start with you, Vishal.
No pressure.
No, thanks, Robyn. I thought we agreed that Harshjit was going to answer this first question,
Thanks,
but
Robyn.
clearly that agreement hasn't. He's the one investing in all. Anyway, putting that aside, my perspective on it is that there are some signs that we are in a bubble. There's a phenomenal amount of capital that is being deployed into this space, but you've got to remember that the nature of our asset class that we participate in, venture capital, is risked capital, which is we are taking risk ahead of a curve and ahead of something maturing with the hope that it matures into something big and that this technology is something that is going to be real and truly revolutionizes every aspect of our lives, whether it is work or play. So if you believe in that big vision and you believe that we're going through a generational technological shift, when you look back in time, perhaps the amount of capital going into the space right now does not seem as great as it does while we're in the dot right now.
Me? I think you have to unpack the money which is flowing in, and you have to see that you have like 3 layers. That's the way I see it. So you have these foundational models where actually majority of the capital is concentrated, and there it is really becoming a war to be the weapon of choice, right? So if I can I be the winner? Can I be the one ring to rule it all? I think that's where most of the money is. But if you look at the infrastructure layers and if you look at the application layers, there's not so much of capital which has gone there yet. And there's a lot of competition. Deals are much smaller in size. So it's actually these mega-sized deals on the foundational models that create huge amounts of disproportionate spikes in the system, and people look at it and say, hey, something is going wrong, right? And you could attribute all. Let me explain it with a very simple story, right? Of a plushie toy. So my daughter is 5 years old, and she likes plushie toys. And then I got a pitch of a startup which has a plushie toy with LLMs built into it. So the plushie toy is very nice. It talks very nicely to you. It remembers whatever you tell it, and it remembers, you remember your birthday, your friend's birthday. If your friend comes to play, it remembers, okay, this is a new person who has come in. So it's an amazing plushie toy. And she's now saying, I want this plushie toy. But that plushie toy is not available right now because the founder is still doing prototyping and everything else. It's going to come 6 months later.
Right.
So, and then that whole generation of kids will grow up with plushie toys, which are their real friends. Whether that's a good thing or bad thing, I don't know. But I think that's what's happening right now. So we are in the building phase of AI applications, and that innovation will come. The question remains in my mind is, will I as a parent pay 100% premium for that LLM-based plushie toy or not? That's where the touchstone of all this money return will come back to. So yeah, I don't think it's a war. Yeah.
Well, let me just follow up. I mean, how do you know 6 months from now your daughter will still want a plushie toy?
Well, because in that 6 months, I don't see something which is 100x better than what happened today come back, right? So and that is why everybody's putting money in AI, because today it feels like this is the inflection point where something which was 100x better than before has come up, captured the imagination. Let's say between now and then quantum computing breakthrough happens, and then new form of AI happens, I think then money will shift there. And sure, all of this money which is went into transformer model in AI might not work anymore. So that will be down the drain. You have completely new paradigm. But I think innovation is step changes don't happen so fast. It takes so much more time. So I think this is okay in my mind. This has to happen.
Like another way of saying that is also that the question isn't if, it's when and how. And so the bet that you're making is on how it's going to happen and whether it's going to happen now, not if this technology is going to be something that is mature and revolutionized.
But this technology may look nothing like a plushy toy, to be clear, right?
Yes. I just took that as a simple example. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, first of all, I think I realized that many people don't know what is IFC. So just to put it out there, it's the International Finance Corporation, not the International Fragrance Corporation, as somebody mentioned to me earlier. And we are part of the World Bank Group. So I think the reason I mentioned that is because we are a bit different from the other VCs here, where we have a sort of holistic approach to AI, more so in emerging markets. So we have offices across 100 countries globally, and we sort of deploy about 40 billion annually. And I think we're looking at AI in a very sort of holistic way, where we are saying that it's not just AI applications, which is of course very important, and we want to fund the companies that are coming up with interesting AI applications to solve problems. But I think beyond that, there is sort of 4 pillars, right, of AI that we look at. So I think one is really on the connectivity side. So coming down to basics like broadband, fiber, towers, and that's an area where IFC's invested a lot of money. The second is really on compute and sort of on hyperscalers, data centers. We just announced, about $500 million that we've invested across data centers globally. On upskilling, so sort of digital upskilling is an area again where we look at a lot of investments going in countries like India and other sort of EMs. And then, finally, the AI applications in areas like climate, healthcare, education, and all of that, right? So for us, I think valuations are across the spectrum. So I don't think it's just those 1 or 2 news items that you look at, but I think it's also the whole infrastructure ecosystem around it, because the way we think about it is that it solves a problem. It's solving a major problem in these markets, and that you need these applications to grow productivity, grow incomes, and sort of, grow. I mean, there's some kind of numbers that were maybe it was Sequoia only who said it, that the GDP of the world is going to grow by, I think, 15%, just based on AI applications and AI infrastructure. So.
I mean, I'll answer your question 2 ways. So one is if you take a regional perspective. I think if you look at India and Southeast Asia, I would contend that at best in the whole LLM, generative AI space, there's probably been a few $100 million that's been invested. It's a fraction of the total venture dollars that have grown in. So certainly in our region, I don't think we're at a point of seeing a bubble. Personally, I wish we see more. We see more companies and more founders, and we are very excited to back them. I think the second thing I'll say is that I think long term, AI is going to create some sort of deflationary pressure in the sense that I think it will be possible to build bigger companies with lesser dollars. We will see companies that will get to triple-digit $1 million in revenue with less than 100 people, because thanks to copilots and agents, it's going to be possible for each person to achieve a lot more. So over time, the dollars you would need to build enterprises actually, or new companies, particularly if you're building things in the technology space, should decrease. So I'd say the potential is massive, and we're excited to see where it goes.
Well, I guess as a sort of counter to that, when you see people like Sam Altman talking about potentially raising $7 trillion to make chips, that to me doesn't seem like the costs are coming down anytime soon. So how do you think about, okay, when are these costs actually going to come down? How do you scale? How do you generate a return?
Yeah, I think it's important to think about where you play in the stack. So, everything that is, in the, data center layer, which is if you want to build chips, you need to build new data centers, there needs to be more sources of power. Like all of those things are going to see an explosion because there's going to be more demand. On the language models themselves, you're going to see more and more dollars flowing in because the cost to training a new model keeps increasing as the size of the model you build increases. So I'd say on those two parts of stack, certainly we're going to see more and more dollars flowing in. There's going to be a need for increasing capital. But then when you go to sort of the application layer, which is how you and I will interact with AI or use AI in our daily lives, I think that cost for people, the end users, I think that starts to come down. We saw that with the cloud, where people could start companies, spin a server up on AWS and launch sooner. I think you're going to see the same thing with AI, where it'll be easier and easier to build a company.
I'm going to double down on what he said, which is, first, AI is bigger than the proclamations of Sam Altman on stage, right? The ecosystem is far more vibrant than just one man. And so you've got to look a lot more holistically on what's happening in AI as an ecosystem and not just on what makes the news headlines. The second is that I think a lot of the benefits that we already experience are invisible, so we don't really account for them. And I'll share a quick vignette on that. I shuttle between the Bay Area ecosystem and the one over here. And one of the things I've noticed in that ecosystem in the Bay Area is that the startup stack is changing quite significantly already. And what I mean by that is startups are starting to experiment at a far higher degree with utilizing AI to augment or rebuild the company from the ground up than they are in other ecosystems around the world, definitely more than Southeast Asia right now. And what does that mean? That means that what you can achieve as a single founder or as with two people is significantly more than what you could do just a few years ago. And that affects the entire economics of how you build the company from the ground up. So in places like Silicon Valley, where the pressure is where the largest cost base that you have is on talent, the ability to shave off even a few, even some of that cost or a percentage of that cost increases the mortality or your ability to really survive and build your company. And I think those effects, those second-order consequences, aren't accounted for right now in a meaningful enough way when we think about how the landscape is already changing with AI.
Robyn, the only thing I wanted to clarify, I think your question is, so much money in, where are the returns? And I think what is going to happen is, like all VC investments, there's a power law. Even VCs follow a power law. So what's happening is everybody's investing because, hey, if my company becomes very large, I'll get a return. I think at the end of the day, there will be few VCs whose few companies will end up accumulating majority of the returns. So it is a given that there will be a large number of losers of capital in VCs as well.
Yeah.
Now the question is, if I'm a professional VC, do I pay to play or not? And I need to, because that's my job. So I need to better go in, day out, work out, figure out which is the best company I can find, and then go and pay and play. I think that's where, that's the industry, right? The problem is the second order effects. If too much money has gone in and your LPs don't make money on that, and then what happens if 80% of VCs don't make money, will the VC industry itself fall? I think that's an interesting question to ask. But the larger amounts of capital are now starting to come from sovereign funds and the bigger things. I think the early stage VCs have played a certain amount of role, but now it's going to corporations or Microsoft of the world, Googles of the world, putting in huge amounts of dollars, which hopefully they have enough cash to actually play, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great segue into my next question, which I wanted to ask, which are, what are the opportunities for early stage VCs, particularly in this part of the world?
Oh.
And Geetali, I'd like to start with you because I
Okay.
know that IFC, you guys have a very different mandate,
Sure.
And when you look at startups, you must have lots of different considerations.
Yeah, so I think if I had to just think about my pipeline currently, or sort of where we are digging into what areas, what a huge area is healthcare. So in healthcare data is, first of all, very fragmented. It's disaggregated. Healthcare professionals are scarce in our region. So in several countries across Southeast Asia, India, South Asia in general, we don't have the right infrastructure in healthcare. People are mostly paying out of pocket, so it's not even covered by insurance. So I think there's so much opportunity here for AI to sort of apply in healthcare. we've already invested in a company in Africa, which is sort of digitizing the whole healthcare ecosystem. It's a company called Kera. We have another one in our portfolio, which is an Indian company where, sort of 600 people at the back end in India sort of digitizing healthcare as it works in the US. So that's, I think, a key area of focus for us. And so that's healthcare. I think another area that we are looking at is on this whole sort of marketing and sort of creative industries side. So that's been a very interesting space where, I mean, essentially, if you think about it, almost 60–70% of every company's branding or advertising today is digital, right? And it's sort of growing every year as we speak. And a lot of people are required today, so it's a very manual, sort of people-heavy business. But I think we're starting to see a lot of technology and AI come into that space, where technology is learning really fast and telling you really fast what works, what doesn't work, where can you save money, where can you, make more dollars. So I think that's another very interesting sort of consumer-related space that we look at. Yeah, so I would say 2 applications in the portfolio right now. I think third would really be mobility and logistics. So that's another area where we see a lot of opportunity, which is very traditional commerce. If you think about it, it's very traditional commerce. There's a lot of data, but no one's actually digitalizing it. So we do see some companies at the front of this sort of building tools which will digest this whole information pool and make things more efficient.
So that makes a lot of sense. I mean, digitizing, automating, upgrading a lot of these traditional industries. But when you look at AI, do you treat it as something fundamentally different and separate from, say, software companies, from what we've seen in the past decade?
I think, frankly, AI is somewhere maybe an extension to it.
Yeah.
So I don't think, I mean, there are a lot of companies which are SaaS companies as a sort of foundation. That's where they started. They're now, obviously, they have so much data. They have great clients. They have great logos on their platform. And they're able to build products which are more catered on the AI side, right? So I think there's enterprise, AI enterprise SaaS companies. So I don't think it's one or the other, essentially.
Right.
I think AI is just like cloud, going to be cloud in another, like stable stakes. Any company which is building any application will have to use AI. So you can't say I'm not an AI company anymore. I think the important thing is how are you going to use that AI? Why are your usage better than somebody else? So it's going to be inseparable part. Like you have to write code to program. So AI, every company has to be AI company, bottoms. Like it's just as simple as that. I think the question is, you have to imagine second order effects. For example, sometimes I feel reskilling of population will become very big problem in the few years, and that's a problem to be solved because AI will replace lots and lots of jobs in all the, most of our economies are people intensive. What if we start using, for example, let's say in hotel industry, more and more robots for room service? Then you need less of folks. Call centers are anyways going to get replaced, right? So all of these people are going to be out of jobs, and we need to figure out how to reskill them. AI is leading into robotics, so all sorts of robotic manufacturing processes are going to come into place. Then manufacturing jobs are going to be at loss. Then what do you do? So I think AI is going to be pervasive, and then, so the second order effects is where you have to start thinking and saying, okay, can I invest, like I'm thinking, can I invest in robotic manufacturing? Can I invest in reskilling? I think those are the interesting areas. The most common areas everybody sees, like everybody has high IQ, they can identify marketing, they can identify finance, because there's the first order. I think what is the second order effect of that? If AI is going to tell me whether I should buy or sell a share, and everybody is going to get the same advice, then now how do I make alpha in the market? It's kind of like that. So I think it's hard. Yeah.
What you said reminded me of how through the years, the way technologies change from being its own category into something that's a horizontal and across the board is we've just gone through it so many times. It's surprising that it's still surprising. I remember when I started investing 10 years ago, around the same time you did, companies used to say that they were cloud-based on their decks. So the main value prop was we're a cloud-based company. And that was a big deal. And then it became mobile first. right? Then when companies started to develop apps and you're on the phone and mobile first was the value prop, right? Then it moved into, this is token 2049 offshoot, so it became blockchain based, right? After that. And that was the main thing. And now we're seeing the same thing with AI, which is we think about it as a discrete category, but it's actually more of a technology horizontal that everyone is going to have implemented in some way or the other in their businesses. And that's kind of the way that we think about it. And the way we think about the opportunity across the world, because we invest in pretty much every single market, is that the opportunity is shaped by the markets themselves. It's like wine and terroir, right? You're going to produce different kinds of wine based on where exactly in the world you are. So in Southeast Asia, have we been seeing foundational models? Not really, but we see more of it in the US. We've seen one in Japan that we've invested in it. We're seeing it come out of Europe a little bit more than it is over here in Southeast Asia. But in Southeast Asia, while we see things that are on the application layer, to use your analogy, we're also seeing interesting things happening on the chip and hardware level. And the reason for that is, fun fact, Southeast Asia was a large manufacturing base for the semiconductor industry, and there remains a very large body of talent over here. So whether it's photonics on chip that increases bandwidth for AI applications of data centers or other innovative applications, we're seeing these opportunities change based on which regions we're investing in different parts of the world.
Yeah, I think sort of building on that, I think there's a huge opportunity in our region for reimagining services. India, Philippines, there are sort of markets that traditionally have seen some amount of outsourcing that tends to happen from the more developed markets to that, and people in these regions truly understand what it takes to be able to sort of build a services company. Now with AI, you can imagine that gets turbocharged. You can build a new age services company, whether it's for IT services, whether it's for outsourcing, BPO, KPO. I think that's one theme where I think our region has a unique strength. They understand what it takes to build the business, and then you reimagine that same business with AI. So that's one opportunity I think we're certainly very excited about. I think the second is, we've made one foundation model investment in India, and we do believe that there will be regional foundation models. I think more and more governments are going to realize that how important AI is, and they will want some amount of visibility into what models folks are using, particularly for more sensitive applications, and we think there's certainly an opportunity there. And the third thing I'd say is because every developer is going to use AI in some shape or form, building tooling for them to be able to better use the generative AI stack is going to be important. India, for example, had the second highest number of developers in the world, and so building for yourself and building for others like you can certainly be a very interesting opportunity that exists as well.
I'm very intrigued when you said you're going to see more foundational models in this part of the world, because obviously headlines are OpenAI, lots of investment, and these are huge foundational models backed by lots of money. What do you think it will take for India to have more foundational models? Is it a matter of investment? Is it talent? Is it regulation? Would the government have to step in, for example?
Yeah, I think the first prerequisite is talent. Building foundation models is extremely complex. And I'd say the US has had an advantage because there's a very research-oriented culture that exists. Large universities in the US have, big PhD programs. There is a big focus on sort of, that research. Large corporations, whether it's Meta, whether it's Google, they have divisions that, focus on sort of, doing that. We haven't seen sort of, this, exist in our region, in the same numbers. And so I think once you have the base of talent, I think certainly there will be capital available. I don't think that is going to be as much of a challenge. But I do think that, given that it is a globally competitive market, you're competing with the best in the world, do you have people that, can essentially deliver? I think that's the key question.
But I think that it's actually the wrong question to ask in my mind, because developers are very fickle, and there was this rhetoric going on at one point of time that we should have Indian models, we should have India company, and then and so I asked some developers, some of my founders, okay, we will go fund one company like this, and I'll put $20 million of my money building something like that. Now tell me this: because it's Indian, you'll only use that model, and tomorrow if OpenAI is 5 times better, you'll not shift. They said, no, I have to use the best model. So like to Harshjit's point, if you build an Indian company, it still has to be competing with the best. Then I said, okay, Indian company, like, but it is 2 times more expensive. I said, no, I still have to use then the cheaper model. So the customer of LLM models is very price sensitive, very quality sensitive. They will use the best of the best. Interestingly enough, the paradigm that you can use different models is starting to evolve, and different models are better at some different things. So I think it's interesting to see what's going to happen there. But yeah, I think the answer that there should be a sovereign LLM, I think it's a policy question more than anything else.
I mean, it almost sounds like because the quality of the model matters so much that having a local ecosystem is not as important, right? Then you can have your AI applications and software in India using foundational models elsewhere. Is that correct?
I think
that's where the industry is heading.
I think my perspective is majority of the value in our AI application is derived from the data sets. So as long as you have local data sets which are unique to you, you can derive a lot more value than changing the fundamental LLM. So people should focus on that, and that's where they can compete.
I'll draw an analogy for you that may or may not be useful. Hopefully it will. It's the space industry, which is one of my pet sort of like areas that I enjoy. For the longest time, the space industry was dominated by a couple of government players, right? You had NASA in the US, Soviet Space Agency, the Japanese, Chinese Space Agency. And recently, because access to the technology of building and launching rockets has become easily available, and also the sovereign need to access space has become a lot more important, we see a promulgation of space startups and space agencies from different governments around the world trying to build their own launch capabilities. And the reason they're doing it is that you view it as an issue of national interest, of national security, and of your own sovereignty. And so I think the same thing applies to AI and foundational models as well, which is it's starting to creep into that zone, especially as our world is becoming more politicized. But that's not going to, at least for now, I don't think it means that you're going to use a subpar model just because it's domestically created, right, to Prayank's point.
I mean, if we have Terminator as AGI, will I want to fight with the Indian soldier or will I want to fight with the best soldier? I think that's the way I think about it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe to Prayank's point, I think, quality and local are not necessarily sort of, at odds. I think, as he said, the data sets matter. And so the question is, if you have sort of, foreign players, are they going to really invest in collecting, local and regional data sets that are going to be important, or are they going to focus on sort of, where there's maximum revenue potential and they focus on those markets? And so, we're invested in a company called Swaroop. Vivek was just up on stage right before this. And one of the big focus areas for them is actually collecting proprietary data. They are actually sort of, from, Villages India, there's actually sort of, spoken language data that they are collecting, which is going to help them, train better models for regional languages in India, which is perhaps sort of, what will improve quality over the long run.
Okay. So we've got a couple of minutes left, so I just want to pivot to my final question, which is how you guys are using AI in your day-to-day life as well as your work. So for me, I've been experimenting quite a bit in my job, but not so much that I know I will be replaced one day. So I'd love to just hear what your AI experience
Geetali?
has been so far.
I'll go first. Okay.
Other than the toy, other than your
Other
plush
than the toy, yes.
Okay.
So, for the last few years, I've been trying to battle losing weight. Okay. Now, I've tried nutritionists. Obviously, my wife has counseled me a lot. Like, every family member, every office person has come and told me, do this, do that. And I realized it's just crazy. I want a non-judgmental nutritionist who I can go and tell today I ate like 2 Kit Kat bars even I was not supposed to, and like no, you should like. So I think talking to a machine, talking to an agent who can just guide you. So it's a part psychology, part nutrition, part all of that. That's nice. Oh, I did a mistake, but okay, so it'll be okay. Just walk for 2 hours extra. Don't shout at me. Like, you want something which is nice. So that's one. Like that's one. Emotional help. You want people are down. Boss shouted at you. You don't want anybody to know. Today it's very expensive to go and find coaches like that. How can you find somebody like that for nutrition, for well-being, for mental health? I think that's one which I'm experimenting and figuring out, at least for weight loss. Second, I like my time back, and keeping up with AI news is bad. Like, it's just so much AI news. So I'm actually trying to code a recommendation system where I read like thousands of articles, and next week I need to read only 10 or 20 which are relevant for me. I'm happy if any of the founders have built something like that. I would love to use it, pay for it. Just give me back my time. So yeah.
I guess I'll give the 2 most recent use cases. So one is we're planning a trip end of this month. We're going to Norway, and I'm planning to drive around. And obviously, foreign country, never been there before. And I've used sort of ChatGPT to recommend a road trip itinerary. Told them sort of what I like to see, and it's actually been really good because something that would have taken me a few hours to figure out. Is now, significantly easier. I've tweaked it around a little bit. It's, not necessarily the final output, but, it's been a really good starting point. And then at work, I've used the summarization feature a lot, right? Like Prayank said, our jobs entail consuming a lot of information, and I wish I had more time in the day to consume all the stuff. But now, actually, being able to, summarize some, whether it's articles, whether it's research reports, whether it's earnings reports, like those types of things, I think it's been quite useful.
Okay, I'll go next. I have to confess that I haven't been using much of AI in my personal life. I mean, I think I was reading something that even at work, venture capital firms are using less than 5% of AI for their own processes, right? But that's actually going to start getting more interesting as we go ahead. But I think in my personal life, I mainly use ChatGPT, as you said, maybe to help me draft emails or like draft sort of LinkedIn posts, or even helps me understand if a founder has replied to me, and I have this box open on the other side which tells me, has he typed it on ChatGPT? So that also gives me some indication of the kind of person I'm talking to. So.
Oh, I use it for as many things as I possibly can. I've done like breakup text, like it's not you, it's me, but it's so much better with AI because it can tell the whole story. I've done coding, like creating Python scripts that I can use on my computer for a variety of different tasks. It's just fun experimenting with it. Designed a website using a AI website builder tool, hacked and experimented with that a little bit, and also trying to see how we can utilize it better in the firm in terms of like deal sourcing and analysis and stuff like that, doing a first cut of things. It's quite fun, right, just to experiment with the space. Last year for my birthday party, I really love hip hop, so I tried to work with a couple of different AI programmers to try and create something that took photos of my guests as they were coming up the stairs of my party and transform them into hip hop album covers. As they walked up the stairs, they'd go in, and on the projector, bam, hip-hop album cover. It didn't work the way I wanted to, like it all mangled up their faces and stuff, but hey, I tried.
So the money question is, how much did you pay for these services then? Like, are these for your weight loss AI? Was that free?
I code myself, so zero.
Okay.
And I use ChatGPT.
So you spent $0 on AI.
$20 per month.
ChatGPT,
ChatGPT.
That's free.
Yeah.
your hip hop and your breakup text.
I haven't been looking at the invoices. I probably should.
I think the most fun thing I have done with AI is on my wife's birthday. She's a big fan of Trevor Noah. I was supposed to take her to a Trevor Noah show in Bangalore, and it got cancelled. So I cloned Trevor Noah's voice, wrote a birthday greeting for her, and sent it to her on a WhatsApp text, And I was like, Trevor Noah's in Bangalore. Unfortunately, we couldn't meet her, but I figured out how to get your birthday greeting from him. And the problem was she caught it, and like this is Chat GPT. You don't speak such good English. He doesn't speak such good English. His voice is Trevor Noah, right? So that was a challenge. So yeah, that is $1, $2, $3 spent, well spent.
Okay.
Yeah.
So good. What about you?
I have spent $0 on AI, which goes back to my first question of the panel. Okay, well, on that note, thank you, everyone, and
Thank you.
Thanks, Robyn.
Thank you so much.